Hello, my dear friend. Welcome to your sleep story. My name is Steven Dalton, and tonight it's my honor to guide you into a world of peace and serenity. Let's start by taking a deep breath. Inhale deeply, letting the air fill your lungs, and then exhale slowly, releasing all the tension of the day. As you settle into your bed, feel your body sinking into the mattress, cradled by its warmth and comfort. Tonight, we'll step into the story of Catherine and David, a young couple embarking on a journey of discovery, love, and transformation. Close your eyes and imagine the soft rustling of leaves, the faint scent of wildflowers carried by the breeze, and the gentle warmth of sunlight. As we begin, Catherine and David had always known the city, its towering buildings, bustling streets, and endless energy were a backdrop to every chapter of their lives. It was there they'd met, shared their first date in a quiet little park, and even exchanged vows in a quaint urban church. Yet, as they stood hand in hand, watching the city lights flicker like stars, they felt a longing, an ache for something quieter, slower, and more connected to nature. One crisp spring morning, as the city buzzed awake, Catherine opened a letter that changed everything. It was from a distant relative's estate, and nestled among the words of condolence was an extraordinary surprise. Her great-aunt Violet, a woman she barely knew, had left her a cottage in the countryside. The news felt surreal, like a dream Catherine couldn't quite grasp. She remembered visiting the place only once or twice as a child, faintly recalling a garden bursting with life, a barn filled with animals, and the comforting presence of her great-aunt. Catherine showed the letter to David, who immediately saw the spark in her eyes. They spent the day discussing their future, envisioning what life could be like in a small stone cottage far from the city. The allure of a fresh start grew stronger with every word they exchanged, and soon the decision was made. They would leave behind the familiar chaos of the city and embrace the unknown. The following week, after attending Aunt Violet's intimate funeral and bidding farewell to their apartment, Catherine and David packed their belongings into a weathered moving truck. As the city skyline receded in the rearview mirror, they felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The road stretched ahead like an open invitation, winding through rolling hills and past serene lakes. Catherine rolled down the window, letting the fresh country air tousle her hair. It smelled of wildflowers and dew, a scent so pure it made her smile. As they turned onto a dirt path lined with trees, David glanced at Catherine. "Are you sure this is the right way?" he asked, his voice tinged with doubt as he navigated the uneven road. Catherine double-checked the neatly folded map in her lap. "Yes," she said confidently, pointing ahead. "This is it." The overgrown path seemed endless, but as they emerged from the tunnel of trees, there it was, the cottage among the hills. It stood as if frozen in time, its stone walls blanketed in ivy and its green shutters weathered by years of neglect. The roof sagged slightly with patches of missing tiles, but the charm was undeniable. Catherine's heart swelled as she took in the sight, imagining the memories they would create here. David parked the truck, and together they stepped out into the crisp country air. The cottage seemed to hum with quiet energy, as though it had been waiting for them. Catherine approached the old oak door, brass skeleton key in hand, and after some fumbling, the lock clicked open. The air inside was musty, carrying the scent of aged wood and forgotten books. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, illuminating the layers of time that had gathered within. Books were stacked on every surface, their pages yellowed and edges worn. Furniture, though covered in cobwebs, hinted at a past life filled with stories and love. Catherine ran her fingers along the edge of a wooden table, imagining the meals once shared there. Despite the cottage's imperfections, she and David saw only potential. A home where laughter would echo, bread would bake in the oven, and dreams would take root. The couple exchanged a glance, their eyes alight with shared excitement. They spent the rest of the day exploring the property. The garden was a wild tangle of weeds and forgotten flowers, and the barn, though sturdy, bore the marks of time. Catherine and David envisioned it all restored to its former glory. Rows of vegetables thriving under the sun, animals grazing contentedly in the barn, and evenings spent watching the stars from the porch. That night, as they sat on the floor of their new home, eating a simple meal of bread and soup, they felt a profound sense of gratitude. The city felt like a distant memory, replaced by the promise of a life rooted in nature and love. They fell asleep on a mattress placed on the bedroom floor, lulled by the symphony of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves outside. The cottage among the hills was more than just an inheritance. It was a gift of possibility, a canvas for a life they had only dreamed of. And as the stars glittered above, Catherine and David knew they had found their true beginning. This script maintains a soothing tone with vivid imagery to captivate the listener while creating a calming atmosphere. It's designed to immerse the audience in the story while gently guiding them into relaxation. Let me know how you'd like to proceed now that we've arrived at Catherine and David's new home among the hills. Let's take a moment to settle back into the gentle rhythm of the countryside. Feel your body sinking deeper into your bed, cradled by its warmth and softness. With each breath, let your mind drift to the image of a cozy stone cottage nestled among rolling green hills, waiting patiently for its second chance to be a home filled with love. Catherine and David woke early the next morning, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the shutters. The air carried the crispness of spring, and the birds outside seemed to be singing a welcome song. They stood hand in hand at the front door, surveying the work ahead of them. The cottage, though charming, had clearly been untouched for years. Dust and cobwebs blanketed the furniture, the shutters clung stubbornly shut, and ivy crept up the walls as if trying to reclaim the structure for nature. But instead of feeling daunted, they felt inspired. This was their home now, a place where they could build their dreams. Catherine, ever the organizer, began to make a mental list. "We'll need to clear out the rooms, clean everything, and decide what to keep," she said. David nodded with a grin, already eyeing the overgrown garden. "And I'll tackle the outside. This place needs sunlight and fresh air." They rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Catherine began inside, uncovering furniture that had been lovingly chosen long ago. She ran her fingers along the edges of an intricately carved wooden table, its surface scuffed and worn, but brimming with character. In the corner of the living room, she discovered a stack of Aunt Violet's books. The pages were yellowed, and some bore handwritten notes in the margins. As Catherine flipped through them, she felt a connection to her great aunt, as though the woman's spirit lingered in the house, eager to guide them. David, meanwhile, wrestled with the ivy clinging to the shutters. With every vine he removed, light poured into the cottage, illuminating its potential. He opened the windows, letting in a gentle breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers. The cottage seemed to sigh with relief, as though it too was awakening after a long slumber. By midday, the couple paused for a simple lunch on the front steps. They shared sandwiches and talked about their vision for the cottage. "I can see us here," Catherine said, her eyes sparkling. A fire in the hearth, bookshelves lining the walls, and the smell of fresh bread baking in the kitchen. David smiled, wiping a smudge of dirt from her cheek. "I can see it too," he replied, "and I think we'll make it even better than we imagine." The days that followed were filled with laughter and determination. Each room was slowly transformed as Catherine dusted, polished, and rearranged. She set aside old furniture that could be restored and lovingly cleaned the pieces they would keep. David repaired broken tiles on the roof and patched holes in the walls. Together, they began to breathe life back into the space, turning the cottage from a relic of the past into a canvas for their future. One afternoon, Catherine discovered a collection of photographs. Tucked away in a drawer, the black and white images showed Aunt Violet as a young woman smiling in the garden or tending to animals. In one photo, she was surrounded by a group of children, their faces alight with joy. Catherine felt a pang of nostalgia, imagining the laughter and stories that had once filled the cottage. Inspired, she decided to honor Aunt Violet's legacy by incorporating elements of her life into their new home. She framed a few of the photographs and placed them on the mantel, a quiet tribute to the woman who had made this all possible. As the weeks passed, the cottage began to reflect Catherine and David's personality. The walls were freshly painted, the furniture restored to its former glory, and the once dusty floors gleamed. The scent of lavender and rosemary, Catherine's favorite herbs, wafted through the air, creating an atmosphere of warmth and comfort. Outside, David had cleared the garden of weeds and tilled the soil, preparing it for new life. He found old tools in the shed and spent hours repairing them, taking pride in every hammer stroke and tightened bolt. Catherine joined him one sunny afternoon, planting rows of vegetables and flowers. "This will be our little sanctuary," she said, patting the soil around a sprout. Evenings at the cottage became a time for reflection and connection. After their hard work, Catherine and David would sit on the porch, watching the sun dip below the hills. The sky turned shades of gold and lavender, and the first stars appeared like tiny diamonds. They talked about their dreams and laughed over the mishaps of the day, like the time David accidentally painted his shirt along with the windowsill, or when Catherine mistook a shadow for a mouse and leapt onto a chair, shrieking. Through it all, they felt a growing sense of belonging. The cottage wasn't just a house. It was becoming a home. It was a place where they could be themselves, surrounded by nature and the quiet hum of life. One evening, as Catherine flipped through one of Aunt Violet's old books, she found a handwritten note tucked between the pages. It read, "The land gives back what you put into it. Care for it, and it will care for you." Catherine showed the note to David, and they both felt a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about restoring a cottage. It was about creating a life that honored the past while embracing the future. By the end of their first month, the transformation was undeniable. The once neglected cottage now radiated warmth and charm, a testament to Catherine and David's love and effort. And as they lay in bed one night, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl, they felt a deep sense of peace. "This is where we're meant to be," Catherine whispered, her head resting on David's shoulder. He kissed her forehead and smiled. "It feels like the beginning of something wonderful." The cottage had waited patiently for years, and now it was alive again, filled with laughter, love, and the promise of new memories. Take another deep breath in and let it out slowly. As you relax, imagine the soft hum of the countryside, the distant chirping of crickets, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the warmth of sunlight spilling over the hills. Tonight, we continue the story of Catherine and David as they embrace a new rhythm of life, one guided by nature and the simple joys of living off the land. The cottage, now alive with Catherine and David's touch, was ready for its next transformation. The land surrounding their home, overgrown and wild, called out for care and attention. Catherine stood at the edge of the garden one morning, surveying the tangle of weeds and dried crops. "This will be our heart," she said softly, imagining rows of vegetables, vibrant flowers, and the hum of bees. David, standing beside her, smiled. "Let's make it happen." With tools inherited from Aunt Violet's shed, they began the labor of love that would turn the garden into a thriving sanctuary. The first step was clearing the land. Together, they pulled weeds, their hands quickly becoming stained with soil. Though the work was hard, they found joy in every task. Catherine hummed a tune as she worked, the melody carried by the breeze, while David joked about his sore back and teased her about her muddy face. The couple visited the local farmer's market to gather seeds for their garden. Catherine carefully selected tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and beans. She also picked bright marigolds and lavender, determined to bring both beauty and utility to their little plot. Neighbors at the market, noticing their enthusiasm, offered advice and shared stories about their own gardens. Back at the cottage, Catherine and David began planting. Each seed was placed with care, and as they patted the soil over them, they whispered their hopes for the future. "Grow strong," Catherine said with a smile, "and we'll take good care of you." David laughed, but he too felt a sense of connection to the earth beneath their hands. As spring turned to summer, the garden began to flourish. Green shoots pushed through the soil, and soon the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Catherine loved spending her mornings in the garden, her hands gently tending to each plant. She found herself flipping through Aunt Violet's old notebooks, discovering tips and tricks for nurturing a healthy garden. While Catherine focused on the garden, David turned his attention to the barn. It had weathered years of neglect, but its sturdy structure held promise. He replaced missing panels, repaired the broken door, and patched the roof. Neighbors often stopped by to lend a hand or offer tools, their generosity a testament to the tight-knit community Catherine and David had become a part of. Once the barn was repaired, David surprised Catherine with a new addition to their homestead, a small flock of chickens. Catherine's face lit up as she watched the fluffy chicks peck at the ground, their tiny chirps filling the air. "They're perfect," she said, scooping one into her hands. Together, they built a cozy chicken coop near the barn, complete with nesting boxes and a secure run. As the chicks grew into hens, they began laying eggs, adding another layer of sustenance to the couple's life. Catherine loved starting her mornings by gathering the fresh eggs, her basket swinging gently as she walked back to the cottage. David joked that their rooster, with its punctual crow at dawn, was the best alarm clock they'd ever had. The homestead continued to grow, each new addition bringing fresh joy. One day, a neighbor approached with an unusual request. A small, scruffy brown cow had been abandoned and needed a new home. Without hesitation, Catherine and David agreed. They prepared a cozy corner of the barn, filling it with fresh hay, and welcomed the little cow with open arms. The cow, whom they named Clover, quickly became a beloved part of their routine. Catherine would gently brush her coat in the mornings, while David learned the art of milking. The fresh milk became a staple in their kitchen, used for creamy soups, homemade cheese, and Catherine's favorite, freshly baked bread slathered with butter. Clover wasn't alone for long. Catherine, ever the dreamer, suggested they add a few goats to the barn. David laughed but agreed, and soon the playful creatures brought a lively energy to their homestead. The goats were endlessly entertaining, their mischievous antics providing countless moments of laughter. As the seasons passed, Catherine and David fell into a rhythm. Their days began with the crow of the rooster and ended with the soft chirping of crickets. They took pride in their growing self-sufficiency, their meals filled with fresh vegetables from the garden, eggs from their hens, and milk from their animals. Evenings were their favorite time. After tending to the day's chores, they would sit on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The golden light bathed the hills, and the air was filled with the sounds of contentment. The clucking of hens settling in for the night, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the occasional bleat of a goat. The couple's connection to their land deepened with each passing day. Catherine often reflected on Aunt Violet's wisdom written in the margins of her notebooks. The land gives back what you put into it. Those words rang true as they saw their hard work blossom into a life of abundance and peace. One crisp morning, as the first hints of autumn colored the leaves, David turned to Catherine with a knowing smile. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he said, his voice filled with pride. Catherine nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "This is everything I ever dreamed of," she replied softly. The cottage among the hills, once a quiet relic of the past, was now alive with the sounds of laughter, love, and the rhythm of a simple, fulfilling life. Catherine and David had embraced farm life with open hearts, and in return, the land had given them more than they ever could have imagined. As we continue our journey tonight, allow yourself to sink even deeper into comfort. Feel the weight of your body melting into your bed, your breathing slow and steady, as if in rhythm with the peaceful hills that cradle our story. Tonight, we meet a special companion, a guardian and friend, whose arrival changes Catherine and David's lives in the most wonderful way. The morning was crisp, and the sun had just begun to rise over the rolling hills. David, as he often did, strolled along the perimeter of their property, inspecting the fences. The dew glistened on the grass, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of nature waking up. As he walked, a faint sound caught his attention, a soft, high-pitched whimper coming from the underbrush nearby. Curious, David crouched down and gently pushed aside the branches. There, nestled in a bed of leaves, was a tiny puppy with wide, soulful brown eyes. The little creature was trembling, its tail wagging hesitantly as it looked up at him. David's heart melted at the sight. He extended a hand, speaking softly. "Hey there, little one. You're safe now." The puppy, sensing his kindness, stepped cautiously toward him. When it was close enough, David scooped it up, wrapping his coat around its tiny frame to shield it from the cool morning air. The puppy licked his chin in gratitude, its tail now wagging furiously. When David returned to the cottage, Catherine gasped with delight. "Oh, look at her," she exclaimed, taking the puppy into her arms. The tiny creature wiggled happily, her floppy ears bouncing as Catherine cradled her. "She's perfect," Catherine said, her voice full of warmth. The couple decided to name her Daisy, a fitting choice for such a sweet and delicate creature. They gave her a warm bath in the kitchen sink, washing away the dirt and grime from her time in the wilderness. Daisy's soft brown fur gleamed, and her big paws hinted at how much she would grow. A visit to the local veterinarian confirmed that Daisy was healthy, though very young, only 6 weeks old. The vet couldn't determine her exact breed, but noted her sturdy build and predicted that she would grow into a large, strong dog, ideal for life on the farm. Daisy quickly made herself at home in the cottage. She followed Catherine and David everywhere, her playful energy filling the house with laughter. She tumbled through the garden, chasing butterflies, and napped in the warm sunlight streaming through the windows. Despite her mischievous puppy antics, like chewing on David's boots or digging in the flower beds, Daisy's loyalty and affection were undeniable. As she grew, Daisy began to take on a role that seemed instinctive to her, protector. She would patrol the property alongside David, her watchful eyes scanning for anything unusual. At night, she would curl up by the fireplace, her presence a comforting reassurance for Catherine and David. One day, David noticed that Daisy had taken a particular interest in the barn. She would trot inside, inspecting the stalls and nudging the animals gently with her nose. It was as if she understood her responsibility to care for them. Catherine often found Daisy lying in the barn doorway, her gaze steady and calm, as though standing guard over the homestead. As the seasons changed, Daisy continued to grow, both in size and in spirit. Her once gangly puppy frame became sturdy and powerful, and her playful energy was balanced by a quiet wisdom. She seemed to understand the rhythms of the farm, from the crow of the rooster at dawn to the quiet rustle of leaves as the sun set. David, ever handy, decided to build Daisy her own space outside. Using leftover wood from the barn repairs, he crafted a large doghouse, complete with a sturdy roof and plenty of room for her to stretch out. Catherine added a personal touch, painting a sign that read, "Daisy's Den." Inside, she placed a plush bed and a hand-knitted blanket she had worked on for weeks. Daisy took to her new den immediately, though she still preferred to spend her days roaming the property or lying at David's feet as he worked. She had a way of making her presence known, a bark to alert them of an unfamiliar visitor, a gentle nudge when she sensed they needed comfort, or a wag of her tail to brighten their day. It wasn't long before Daisy proved just how valuable she was to the homestead. One evening, as Catherine and David sat on the porch watching the stars, Daisy's ears perked up. She let out a deep, resonant bark, her gaze fixed on the tree line. David grabbed a flashlight and followed her as she led him toward the edge of the property. There, he found signs of a fox that had been eyeing the chicken coop. Thanks to Daisy's keen senses, the chickens remained safe, and David reinforced the coop the next day. Over time, Daisy became more than just a pet. She was a partner, a guardian, and a symbol of the love that filled their home. Catherine often marveled at how Daisy seemed to understand their emotions. On days when Catherine felt tired or overwhelmed, Daisy would rest her head on her lap, her warm eyes offering comfort. One crisp autumn morning, as Catherine walked through the garden, she paused to watch Daisy playing in the field. The dog's joy was infectious, her tail wagging as she bounded through the tall grass. Catherine felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "We're so lucky to have her," she said to David later that day. Daisy's loyalty and love brought a sense of security and peace to the cottage. She was a reminder of the simple joys in life, the warmth of companionship, the beauty of nature, and the power of kindness. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Daisy's role on the farm grew even more important. She wasn't just a protector of the land and animals. She was a part of the family. Whether she was lying by the fire on a cold winter night or trotting alongside David during his morning rounds, Daisy embodied the spirit of the homestead, a life built on love, trust, and connection. And as the stars sparkled above the cottage each night, Catherine and David knew that with Daisy by their side, their home among the hills was truly complete. Tonight, let's continue our journey with Catherine and David, who have embraced the simple joys of life in their cottage among the hills. As you listen, imagine the warm light of the cottage glowing softly under a starlit sky. Feel the gentle rhythm of this peaceful place, where love and new beginnings are always taking root. The seasons had settled into their natural flow, with life at the cottage running as smoothly as a gentle stream. Catherine and David had fallen into a steady rhythm, their days filled with tending to the animals, working in the garden, and savoring the simple pleasures of the countryside. Yet, amidst their contentment, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. One quiet evening, as the couple sat on the porch, Daisy curled at their feet, Catherine turned to David. "Do you ever feel like this life is perfect?" she began softly. "But there's still more we're meant for?" David smiled, taking her hand. "I know what you mean," he replied. "Maybe our family isn't quite complete yet." It wasn't long after that conversation that Catherine began to notice subtle changes. She felt a new energy in the mornings, a different kind of warmth in the sunlight streaming through the windows. And then came the moment of realization. Catherine was pregnant. The news filled their hearts with joy, and they spent that evening by the fireplace, dreaming of the life they would build for their child. Daisy, always perceptive, seemed to sense the change in Catherine before anyone else. She rarely left Catherine's side, her watchful eyes full of care. At night, she would rest her head gently on Catherine's lap, as if to offer comfort and protection. "She knows," Catherine said with a smile, stroking Daisy's soft fur. "She's already watching over the baby." As the months passed, Catherine and David began preparing for their growing family. They decided the cottage would need more space to accommodate the baby and their future dreams. David, ever resourceful, drew up plans for an addition to the house. With the help of their neighbors, who were always ready with tools and advice, they began building. The new room slowly took shape, blending seamlessly with the charm of the cottage. Catherine, though careful not to overexert herself, contributed by painting the walls in soft pastels and sewing curtains for the windows. Each detail was chosen with love, from the handmade wooden crib gifted by a neighbor to the rocking chair placed near the window, where Catherine imagined singing lullabies as the sun set over the hills. The local community, thrilled by the news of the baby, showered the couple with kindness. Every week, neighbors would stop by with gifts, hand-knitted blankets, tiny clothes, colorful toys, and even jars of homemade baby food. Catherine and David were deeply touched by their generosity, their hearts swelling with gratitude. As Catherine's belly grew rounder, the animals on the farm seemed to sense the excitement. Daisy continued her devoted watch over Catherine, while the chickens clucked more cheerfully than usual, and the goats seemed to frolic with extra energy. Clover, their beloved cow, would nuzzle Catherine gently whenever she approached, as if offering her blessings. The days passed in a gentle rhythm, with the anticipation of the baby adding a new layer of joy to their lives. Catherine often sat in the garden, her hands resting on her belly as she imagined the future. "This little one will grow up surrounded by love," she said to David one evening as they watched the stars. "They'll know the beauty of nature, the value of hard work, and the warmth of a close-knit family." Finally, on a crisp spring morning, the moment they had been waiting for arrived. Catherine and David welcomed their baby girl into the world, her tiny cries filling the room with a new kind of music. She was perfect, with bright eyes and a soft smile that seemed to light up the room. As they held her close, Catherine and David felt an overwhelming wave of love. "We should name her Violet," Catherine said softly, her voice full of emotion. "After Aunt Violet, who gave us this beautiful life." David nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "It's perfect," he agreed. When they brought baby Violet home, the cottage seemed to glow with new energy. Daisy approached the cradle with quiet reverence, her warm brown eyes full of curiosity and devotion. She lay beside the cradle, her head resting on her paws, as if vowing to protect the newest member of the family. Catherine and David marveled at how quickly Daisy adapted to her new role. Whenever Violet cried, Daisy would nuzzle the baby's tiny hand, her soft fur bringing instant comfort. Catherine often found herself smiling as she watched Daisy and Violet together, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Life at the cottage settled into a new rhythm, one filled with the laughter of a child. Violet grew surrounded by the love of her parents, the gentle care of Daisy, and the beauty of the countryside. She toddled through the garden, her tiny hands reaching out to stroke the soft feathers of the chickens and the velvety noses of the goats. She giggled as she watched the ducks waddle around the garden, and she squealed with delight whenever Clover nudged her gently. Evenings were especially magical. Catherine and David would sit on the porch with Violet in their arms, watching the sun dip below the hills. Daisy lay at their feet, her watchful eyes scanning the horizon while the animals settled in for the night. The air was filled with the hum of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl, a symphony of peace that lulled them into contentment. As the seasons passed, Violet continued to blossom. She took her first steps on the grassy fields, her laughter echoing across the hills. She grew curious and adventurous, exploring every corner of the farm with Daisy by her side, always keeping a watchful eye. Catherine and David often reflected on how far they had come. The cottage among the hills, once a quiet and neglected place, was now a vibrant home filled with love, laughter, and life. "This is everything we ever dreamed of," Catherine said one evening as they watched Violet chase fireflies in the fading light. And as the stars twinkled above, they knew that their journey was far from over. With Violet in their arms, Daisy at their side, and the promise of a bright future, their hearts were full, their family complete. Let us return to the cottage among the hills, where Catherine, David, little Violet, and their loyal companion Daisy have built a life full of love, joy, and peace. Close your eyes and let the gentle rhythm of this story carry you to a place where the world feels calm and complete. The seasons continued their quiet dance, painting the hills in shades of green, gold, and white. Life at the cottage settled into a steady rhythm, each day a beautiful blend of hard work, laughter, and quiet moments of gratitude. Little Violet grew with the passing years, her bright eyes filled with curiosity and wonder. She explored the land with Daisy always at her side, her tiny footprints leaving trails in the dewy grass each morning. Catherine and David marveled at how quickly their daughter was growing. Violet had become a little adventurer, chasing butterflies in the garden, feeding the chickens with tiny handfuls of seed, and giggling as the goats nudged her playfully. Clover, their gentle brown cow, often watched over her like a protective aunt, her soft mooing a familiar sound that lulled Violet into a sense of safety. The family spent their days working together, each finding joy in the simple tasks that kept their home thriving. Catherine loved tending to the garden, which had blossomed into a vibrant tapestry of vegetables, flowers, and herbs. She would teach Violet the names of each plant, her voice soft and soothing as they planted seeds side by side. "This is where life begins," Catherine would say, guiding Violet's tiny hands as she patted the soil. David, ever the handyman, had grown skilled at caring for the property. He fixed fences, repaired tools, and kept the barn in good condition, always with Daisy at his heels. The loyal dog had taken her role as protector to heart, keeping watch over the animals and the family with a quiet strength. Her deep bark echoed through the fields whenever a fox ventured too close, sending the intruders scurrying back into the woods. Evenings at the cottage were a time of reflection and connection. After a day's work, the family would gather on the porch to watch the sunset. The sky would blush in shades of orange and pink, and the hills seemed to hum with the contentment of the day. Violet often sat on David's lap, her head resting against his chest, as he told her stories about the stars beginning to twinkle above. Inside, the hearth glowed warmly, casting a golden light across the room. Catherine would bake fresh bread, its comforting aroma filling the cottage. Violet loved to help, her tiny hands dusted with flour as she tried to knead the dough. Daisy would lie nearby, her eyes half closed, always listening for any sign of trouble. One evening, as the family sat by the fire, Catherine looked around the room and felt her heart swell with gratitude. "We've built something beautiful here," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. David nodded, his eyes shining with love. "It's more than I ever imagined," he replied.